Now, the ruling All Progressives Congress has finally released the full list of the Presidential Campaign Council, consisting of 422 members. Now, the final list of the Campaign Council was released over the weekend, a few days to the official commencement of the campaign ahead of the 2023 general elections. Now, today we look at the composition of the Presidential Campaign Council and other issues as the campaign begins this week. And in the studio, we have the Deputy Director of Media and Publicity of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, Ali M. Ali, joining us. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, and congratulations on your appointment.
Well, thank you very much, Usaina. I think you should congratulate me at the end of the process when we win.
Okay, all right. So, we also have, joining us in the studio, another member of the APC, Mr. Njuma Mohammed. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me here.
All right, let's start with Mr. Ali. Now, this particular list came with a lot of controversy, but can you share your thoughts on the composition of the list itself?
Well, thank you, Usaina, for that. You see, if you look at it very closely, you find that in that list, very expansive, but I would say it's also work in progress. You find all Nigerians there, from all walks of life, cutting across all the political structure of the APC. You find giant names, people with heavy electoral value there. But I would understand why people, the hue and cry, because Nigerians, and especially APC members, supporters of the ticket, are very passionate. Everybody will want to contribute their quota. And they think being part of the Presidential Campaign Council is another way. So like I said, you see all Nigerians, all supporters of the ticket are passionate about it. You expect there will be this kind of hue and cry. A lot of people would complain naturally. I have had to deal over the weekend with inquiries like this. Why is so name not there? Why is so name not there? And from the sublime to the absolutely ridiculous. People trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. I've seen that. People making, a big deal out of even names that the president actually directed that shouldn't be part of the campaign council. But you see, you expect this, Usaina. You expect that people would take, if they don't see themselves in there. But look at 422. If you ask me that, I would say it's quite a large to prosecute a presidential campaign. But yes, I can understand why people are, raising concern about this. But I would say, even if you ask me, this is totally my own gut feeling about who is that. It's work in progress. It's just like going into a football duel or any contact game. You put in some at appropriate time. So it's by no means, it can be exhaustive. There will be people, I'm sure, who would even, in their own right, they may even declare. I'm not saying that they're going to do that, but there are people who will say, okay, we work behind the scene, for example. So it's work in progress, and you expect that, especially for a candidate that is monstrously popular, a ticket that is well accepted by members of the party and by supporters of the ticket, by people who are passionate about the ticket, the door of Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashim Shettima. People are very passionate about these Nigerians, about these leaders. And yes, everybody wants to contribute their quota. Yeah.
Aside, away from the issue of exclusion, but even the inclusion, it appears to me rather really bogus. Don't you think that, so many names and is this like a way of intimidation or a way of just putting people's names for the sake of putting people's names? Because it appears rather really bogus in terms of the size.
Yes, I did say that, look at the number. I said so that for me, 422 people in a campaign, I mean, like you said, it could be bogus. But then at the same time, sometimes you see the optics, like trying to get an all-inclusive, even at that, people are kicking now. You want to have an all-inclusive list. Some people will still not be excited because they think their names are not been. But then look at the size of the nation. You understand? 422 people, given the tax, look at the population, look at the registered voters, and then look at the Nigerians. We're talking about nearly 200 million people. And then you have a campaign council that will reach every nook and cranny. Big names. There are names that sometimes it's better to, you are seen with them. There are those going into the polls that without these big names, people will not take them seriously. I'm just saying that. The optics there. And then, like I have said, for optics, you need to have people, big names. It may be bogus to you if you look at it from operationally, if you look at it. But anywhere, you find that the boots that are on ground, the boot that will be on ground, and this is the crux where most of them really may not have, like you said, it may appear bogus. But
okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, let's move on to Mr. Danjuma. Now, the APC governors have actually threatened to sabotage the presidential campaign in their respective states. Not all, some of them. And, this is because they claim that, their nominations for the presidential council was disregarded. Now, do you think the presidential campaign would lose state governors, support since they're responsible for the party structure in their states?
Certainly not. If you look at the trajectory, APC from the convention that elected the NWC to the primaries that elected the party candidate, presidential candidate, and even the PCC, it shows, you get to know that APC has always been able to reconcile issues arising from all these events. I see this as the normal. You see, like my colleague, my brother, to congratulations, mentioned. You see, right now, what you describe as controversy is not really controversy. It's the naturally expected, ovation from the public for the enviable position APC is presently. It is the most formidable, the most united, and the one poised to win the election, in view of the fact that when you compare, and contrast APC in terms of structure, in terms of the formidability of the candidates, and with other political parties, truly speaking, APC is in a very comfort, and in fact, knowing fully well that its strongholds are still very much, within its comfort. And even looking at the National Voter Register, APC has no reason to panic. So for that reason, yes, you have these issues coming up, threats here, threats there. There were threats before the National Convention held. Those threats were, a kind of dissuade, and there was a kind of an election and unanimous endorsement of a National Working Committee, despite all the dust before the event. Same thing, the primaries. In fact, the candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, took it upon himself to reconcile differences that arise from the primaries, such that looking at the composition, you find that not many of his own core supporters are even in the forefront of the campaign. What I'm trying to say is that where the position of, during the primaries, if you look back, the position of the DG of the campaign himself. Very good. And look at the likes of Festus Keyamo. It takes political sagacity to get to this level of reconciliation. So the threats you see, certainly these are not threats, these are mere complaints. And like my colleague said, it's work in progress. 400 men to canvass for votes of over 90 million people, still very, very small. I'm saying this from experience as a former national chairman of a political party and one who contested the presidential election in this country. Is still very small. There are so many, outreaches that are already created and where people will find relevance and still contribute their best. It's because of the popularity of the ticket. That is why we're having all hula baloo.
But there are also speculation beside the issue of the governors that some presidential aspirants are not carried along in the composition of the PCC.
Yes, this issue of, they are all carried along except one, and that's talking about His Excellency the Vice President. But that is on the orders of the President himself. The President is the chairman of the campaign. And don't forget, even in 2019, when Mr. President went around the country campaigning for him, you know, for a re-election, the VP was not with him. He was more attending to the business of governance. That was the reason. The President doesn't want a situation whereby all attention will be, distracted by electioneering campaigns, and the administration of governance, which is public service, abandoned. So the Vice President, I can tell you authoritatively and categorically too, that he is very much with the party, very much with the campaign, and under the directives of the President. So what is exclusion was for the nation, not only him, even the SGF. So his exclusion from the PCC was in the overriding national interest.
Well, Ali, now the campaign is starting in 2 days, and a lot of people, pundits, complain that we have not yet had issue-based campaign so far since the primaries, were concluded. So, what difference are you? What will you change? As the campaign is unfolding, what should we expect from APC Presidential Campaign Council?
Well, you expect a lot. There will be a remarkable departure from the practice and the approach to election of the past. But before I go into that in detail, let me just quickly add to what my colleague here has said about the opposition of the North, especially Northwest governors, to the ticket, because their nominees have not been listed in the Presidential Campaign Council. When I heard that story, sometimes I also want to caution all of us, I mean, especially people who are keenly interested in the process leading to the 2023 election, that this is a time that the media should also be very cautious. Having been a media man myself for years, sometimes there are instances, they may be agenda setting. Why? Because there are people, as of now, you hear all kinds of speculation. You see the media is now it's like literally the guinea pig in which politicians desirous to set agenda, to set people on collusion course. They go to the media. The meat of that story you find out is actually mere speculation. Why I say so? Because the governors in the past were largely responsible for power shift to the south. And for that, till this day, they remain heroes to Nigerians who are convinced that it's only rotation in the parties that would perhaps ensure a stable democracy. So that in the face of that, you see this is clearly grounded on very slippery floor. So now let's get back to issue-based campaign, which is quite novel. In the past, what Nigerians do is to, if you want to market, for example, and this is something, a total departure, at least I will not be part of it. And I'm sure the media and publicity campaign committee will not be part of that. We zero in on what troubles Nigerians now, and what are we all know the issues, the trouble. We want security, we want stable power, we want energy, we want cheap energy, we want education improvement. These are the issues that, and ultimately economic empowerment. And we're going to look at that. We're not going to look at individual. Of course, the drivers, naturally, when you aspire to lead the exalted office of president and vice president, your personal character, your integrity will be subjected to the crucible. It will be scrutinized. Yes, fine. If you offer yourself for leadership, you expect that. It comes with the territory. Exactly. But having said all this, the issues, we've just listed some of them. And Nigerians, all of us, we don't claim omniscience. We're not omniscient. The APC is not, and certainly the ticket of the duo of Bola Tinubu, Kashim Shettima, brilliant Nigerians. They are brilliant leaders in their own right, and you can see they complement each other. Now, we're going to stay clear. We focus on the positive narratives of Nigeria, the evolution of Nigeria itself, how we were, and what got us to this pathetic state that people look at people along these usual fault lines. Abdulaziz is no human, Danjuma is no human unless he's from a certain part of the country or he professes a certain faith. No, we want to go beyond that. We want to look elsewhere, what has happened somewhere else? How did the Asian tigers get to where they are? What did they do differently? How did Singapore, a nation just slightly, a very tiny nation of 2.5 million people, what in Singapore we are not talking of even ethnic differences, we're talking of racial differences. But how did their leaders manage to bring these disparate races together, come blended into nationhood? And these are some of the issues. And unless we put the positive narratives for the young Nigerians, those who like some of us now, we are product of integration. How come? And Ali, for example, I feel as comfortable as I am in my home state of Ghana as I will be in a place like Akwa Ibom because I have friends all over. So this is the thing we're going to focus on. And
okay, now some papers actually carry the story that the ex-SGF and Babachir Lawal have actually said that Tinubu and APC are out to shortchange Christians, and the Northern Christian bloc of the APC have actually vowed to destabilize the campaign. Are you worried that their threat may actually go through and disrupt the chances of the APC winning the 2023 elections?
You see, Babachir Lawal, a great Nigerian, so to say, a leader. But sometimes, when these are the narratives, sometimes that I was just talking about a while ago, and that personally, it talks at my heart when very senior politicians who have benefited from United Nigeria, who have had friends like him from across the religious divide, then to insist on having and carving and insisting on these fault lines when we need to move away from that. And there are a lot of Northerners who have come from mixed religious family backgrounds. I know a lot of them. I can go on endlessly. Even in states that are preponderantly single faith. If you go to Kebbi, for example, you find they're living in harmoniously. You find brethren, you have siblings. You understand? You go to some states in the Southwest. And this is, unfortunately, when you continue to have on this fault line, how do you imagine the other faith will feel? You understand? Because if you're talking of division along this, for how long you're going to segment? There are some people, their own passion is not about religion even. It's about ethnic identity. So when you continue to segment along our usual fault lines, and then somebody, and I respect which emir now who said, look, politicians, when they pull out all the stops, and then at the end of the day, they uncork a genie they cannot put back in the bottle. So if you continue on this depressing trajectory, chances are that you get to a point of no return. And by then you'll be doing a lot of harm. You know, these immortal words of, I'm trying to recall who said it, that I think it's George Bernard Shaw, I'm not too sure now, it's too hazy now, but he said, look, politicians worry about the next election. Statesmen worry about the next generation. So they should have, at what level would people who share the kind of sentiment worry about the next generation? Now, only yesterday, the Vice President was reported even in today's paper that the future of Nigeria was certainly bright. And with due respect to Babachir Lawal, he can be more faithful than Vice President Osibanjo, who is a senior pastor in a church. One of the reasons he came number 2 more than anything else. It's not so much even for his political weight as such, but because, like some people, but then for how long we're going to stagnate? How long we're going to pass this? How long we're going to cement these fault lines? And then begin to see people for what they truly are. As people, you understand. There are people who have changed faith overnight. You understand? And nothing happens. The heavens did not fall. But you can't change being human, transform into something else.
Well, Mr. Danjuma seemed to have, something to say on this issue.
On Babachir. I mean, he's like my colleague said, he's not very, very palatable to see somebody who has held the office as high as the Secretary of the Federal Government, descending this low at a time when statesmanship ought to be, the core expectation. The truth of the matter is that Babachir himself, what made him? He was made by the political influence of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He narrated this before Nigerian media. And if Tinubu had anything against Northern Christians, will he had a kind of preferred Babachir as SGF to several other very qualified contenders then? No. And also talking about Dogara represented, a constituency that was majority Muslims. If not for the support of the likes of the former governor of Bauchi State, Ahmed Muazu. Exactly, Dogara would not have. But that said, what we're saying here is that what made Shetima, the most preferred vice president to be, is simply the overriding national interest. We're talking about quintessential service to this nation. We're talking about there's a person who has something, who has offered what has not been seen in recent time in our democracy. Look, I can tell you, and you can go to Borno State. Shetima built schools under siege and war. He built hospitals under siege and war. He built roads under siege and war. Mention them, you can go on and on. And all I'm trying to tell you is that go back to 1999 to date, the current political class, of which I am personally a member. Mention one person, a Muslim member, or a Christian member, or an atheist, or a traditionalist member of Nigeria political class of 1999 and now that has achieved same record under same circumstances. None. So you see what we are looking for first as Nigerians, we are looking for a man who can deliver the goods, particularly now that the challenges confronting Nigeria is multi-formidable. Sorry, before you go there, you see, there is something which Muslims and Christians seems to be doing to this country before now politically, which is not fair. The framers of our constitutions are very clear about the secular status of the constitution. We are not just a nation of Muslims and Christians. We are a nation of Muslims, Christians, traditionalists, atheists, so many. So to think of segmenting or rotating offices along this line will be catastrophic for the well-being of this country. The best and only sentiment, and not sentiment but understanding, that has proven to be a unifying factor in this country is simply the understanding of rotational presidency between the two protectorates that made Nigeria, the Southern Protectorate and the Northern Protectorate. Outside of this, it is not in the national interest to go beyond and be creating all sorts of sentiments to rotate the presidency. There is nothing wrong. Tomorrow, I am predicting right here that a time will come, we'll have a Christian president and a Christian vice president. And nobody will oppose this.
Well, okay, that's been an interesting conversation with Ali M. Ali, the Deputy Director of Media and Publicity of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, and a chieftain of the party, Mr. Njuma Mohammed. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we hope to have you some other time.